Today on Comm Talk, we're talking about Superman Smashes the Klan Part 2 with my good friend
Carlos.
Okay, what is happening here?
Where are we?
Glix, give us a situation report.
Currently, we are on the planet Geekery. Be warned, our impossibility drive may cause distortions as we traverse this land. Impending impossibility engaging in 3,
Oh, gosh.
2, 1.
Hello, Devoted Geeks. Welcome to Comm Talk, the podcast extension of Geek Devotions, a show from Devoted Geeks who are devoted to letting you know that you are loved. I'm Dallas. With me, as I said before, is
Carlos. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, Carlos Renfroe. Glad to have you here with us, man.
Great to be here, man.
It's been a while since you've been with us.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are just listening to us only on podcast, this is going to be available on YouTube. Unlike our normal video wave that we have actual video. And for today, for episode 82, we're going to be talking about the continuation from Comm Talk episode 65, where we talked about a really interesting book, which was called Superman Smashes the Klan, which is a adaptation of a radio drama from back in the day, where Superman actually fights the KKK. Yes. Now, we need to give some context because it's been a while for some people. We got some new listeners and some new viewers since your episode came out. And so let's just give some context for some folks and everything. Carlos, what do you remember about the background story about this book?
Well, the background about the book itself or the story?
The story, the book itself, how the book came about.
Well, how it came about, part of the story. Well, this story was originally a radio drama,
right?
And at that time, this is in the height of Jim Crow America, and the KKK was a thing then. And this producer for the radio drama was actually trying to get news stories and things actually out there about what the KKK was doing, and he really couldn't get any traction in the media. So this was kind of converted into a radio drama form using Superman as a protagonist,
right,
to kind of shed light on real life events using the fictional storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And it was adapted as a radio drama.
Right. And it shook a lot of place because he actually took the stuff originally to actual authorities, like government authorities, and they're like, we're not going to touch this. Yeah. So this was kind of a bombshell thing.
It was. People were scared of the KKK then.
They were, man. They were a legit thing. And so last time we talked about the story, and it's a really interesting story. This being presented to us through this book, which again is the adaptation, and it's done by a guy named Gene Lun Yang.
Yes. And
Gene I can see why he's attached to it. He himself is he's an Asian American. And the story itself, I think when people think about the Klan, they automatically think it's going to deal specifically with Caucasians versus African Americans,
right?
Which is very logical for the conversation. And we see that play out a little bit in the book. But this is actually focusing around a Asian American family, immigrants that came to our country, and it's following a young lady named Roberta and her brother Lee, and her parents. And they had kind of her dad's a scientist of some sort, and he kind of worked his way up the ladder, and he's got a promotion. He's moved his family out of Chinatown, of Metropolis, and he's moved into a nicer area, and he's doing well for himself. And she's having to navigate this stuff as a young lady,
right?
And unfortunately, in this area, there is the KKK, and they don't like these individuals.
No, they don't.
We find that the KKK has their hands in a lot of moving parts of the area, including her father's job. And along the way, they meet a young boy, and whose uncle is one of like I forgot what they called it. I think Grand Scorpion.
They called him a Grand Scorpion.
Yeah, something like that.
They didn't use some of the official terms of the KKK, but they called him the Grand Scorpion.
Right. And as the Grand Scorpion, he's trying to teach his nephew the proper way of America, which is I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna tell you guys right now. This was really hard for me to read a lot of this and to listen to the radio drama itself.
Right. It's not an easy if you're sensitive to this, which most people are in some shape, form, or fashion. It's not an easy.
Right.
It's not an easy read or easy listen. You kind of have to wrap your mind around that they're trying to make a point with the story.
Exactly, and it's kind of off. It's weird because it's done in such an interesting art style that's very Saturday morning cartoon. You think?
Yes.
And so it's a really interesting storyline, the way it works out. At the same time, you have Superman. And again, this is 1940s Superman.
Yeah.
And it's important for people to remember, this isn't the Superman that we have like right now where, he is like impossible to beat,
Right. And that's what I find very interesting about this story is you're not only learning the story of what's going on with the characters here, is Superman is really learning himself in this story.
Exactly.
So you're getting to see him develop very dynamically in the storyline.
Right. So it's a really interesting aspect of him growing, learning his powers. He can't even fly yet.
No.
And we see a little bit of it happen, but in book
Right.
2, but he can't fly. He doesn't know how to use X-ray vision.
Yeah.
He's growing. And so that's kind of the grasp of this world. And again, if you want a full breakdown of what happens in the first book, I want to encourage you guys, please check out that first episode. Links are in the description down below.
Absolutely.
Both here on YouTube and also on your podcast feed. So all that being said, we're getting caught up now.
Yes.
And again, I think it's important for people to understand we're having this conversation. We're going to be getting into some deep stuff. Like Carlos said, this is, if you're sensitive to some of the stuff, it may be hard for you to hear some of the things we're about to say. And for people who aren't watching the YouTube, you're only listening to the podcast on your podcast catcher. I want you to understand, Carlos is an African American.
I am.
Born and raised black man who is a very godly man. I appreciate your friendship, and I'm really excited to have you on our show every time you're here.
It's great. I definitely appreciate you and your wonderful wife, your family. It's great to have good people around you.
Absolutely, it is. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about the story, what happens in book 2, and then after our commercial break, we're going to talk about some of the deeper themes that take place. Book 1 ends, and they're searching for Lee. The KKK has kidnapped Roberta's brother. He tries to escape, and he's in a river. And so Roberta faces the young boy. I can't remember his name right now. Chuck, that's right.
Yeah.
Chuck, who is the Grand Scorpion's nephew, because she knows he knows something.
Yeah.
And Chuck is dealing with it. He's battling with these emotions.
Chuck is very much in a push-pull here. He in the back of his mind, he kind of realizes his uncle's stance when it comes to minorities and immigrants isn't right. But after all, it's his uncle, and he's looked up to him. And he kind of hints to the fact that he's to help take care of their family in this episode. So he's really torn between how he should feel about this.
Right. So it's so she faces off, and they're off to go find Tommy. And so that's where the book picks up. And it's interesting because, again, Superman's not flying.
No, he's running and skipping and hopping and jumping.
Like, I think he's actually running on the water at one point.
Yeah.
And he's hopping and skipping, trying to figure out where this kid is. And then he has this weird thing where he sees these 2 little green men, or a green man and a green woman. And they're his parents?
Yes.
I haven't done the research enough into it. And maybe those of you guys who are listening or watching.
It seems like it's a perception thing to him because he sees them as a man and as a woman, as his parents, but he sees them very much in an alien form, in the classic way that we would think is alien, as green men with antenna and red eyes and kind of red bug eyes, and it's kind of freaking them out.
Right. It's legitimately, it's kind of a weird scene. And they're looking at him, and I'm looking on, for those of you watching on YouTube, it's on my phone is where I have the book. And Carlos has got this nice big iPad he's using.
I have not so great eyes.
But they're encouraging him. They tell Clark to look through. And all of a sudden, the X-ray vision kicks in. And you could tell, like, he's kind of freaked out by it.
Yeah, because he doesn't
never
really
done
know
that.
what to think.
And so he's surprised by that. And, of course, then the police officer shows up, and they take Tommy off to take care of some certain things.
He does have a broken arm that he needs to go to the hospital. They found him in the river. They get him up, and he's fine.
Right.
But he does have to be taken to the hospital with a broken arm.
Right. So this story picks up, I would say, after the initial introduction of everything. The first book does a great job of establishing the world.
Right.
This one, it's just a natural flow of the story.
Right. You really have to understand what happened in the first book to pick up. They're very much sequential.
Right.
You're really not going to understand what's happening in the second book if you haven't read the first.
Right. So in this one, again, the first one you have the introduction of who's the KKK and what's all this stuff happening. This one though, it seems to be, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong, it seems to focus a little bit more on the peculiar issues that Superman's having.
Right. It takes time with Superman to kind of develop his character, give you a little bit of it. There are several flashbacks, even in the first book, there are several flashbacks to his childhood and him growing up and establishing and remembering that he was different.
Right.
And things that were going on. And this book kind of felt like the character development book, even with the kids.
Right.
There are some things that we'll get to that happens in the story with the young people.
Right.
It's kind of unfolding their character and giving some breathing space for there to be some time for character development.
Right. But I think they do a great job. Like, it doesn't feel rushed to me.
No, it's very well paced. I can say that it's very well paced.
Right. And I think even the way that they handle some of the deeper issues, I think it's tasteful. They're not like, ham-fisting some things. We talked about that last time.
Right.
Was we were nervous going into the book because we're like, all right, are they going to ham-fist some agendas here?
Right, yeah.
It seems very realistic the way it plays out.
It seems very true to the story. It seems very true to the storyline. The language that they use is very true. It's not anything that's vulgar or offensive, but it's very true to the time period. Even them referring to the Chinese immigrants as ching chongs and things like that. No, not something that's vulgar, but it was something that would have been probably acceptable language at the time.
Probably.
And it's very true to the story.
Exactly.
To the time period.
And again, I think it's important for people to understand the time period. This is basically World War II time frame, like post World War II, really.
Post World War II.
And
you get that inflection in the first villain in the first book.
Exactly. And so you're dealing with all these emotions. And I appreciate that the writers of this book, he did a great job of really honoring the tone of the era. Was there anything about this particular book you really enjoyed?
Like I said, I really enjoyed the space that they gave the book and the characters to breathe. You had opportunity where even Roberta runs to her old friends from Chinatown,
right? And
there's a conflict where you've moved on. Do you think you're better than us?
Right.
You're here with your with your other friends, and it's obvious to them that they mean you're here with your other friends or your white friends. Because there's a scenario if you read the book where they end up Chuck, in trying to do the right thing, gets them to go to a movie to move them out of harm's way from the nefarious deeds of his uncle. And you see now she runs into her old friends from Chinatown.
Right.
And now they kind of got the Jefferson thing going on. They're moving on up. and their friends in some ways sort of resent that.
Right.
Roberta is she's torn between, embracing, because at the beginning of the first book, she really struggled with the move and really struggled with her new surroundings.
Right.
So now she's torn between embracing, where she's going, because after, Superman rescues her brother and everything, everybody's kind of fascinated with them. They want to know, did you get to meet Superman? She has a coat that her mom sold out of the cape that Superman gave her.
Right.
And so now they've gone from being the new kids on the block and being these immigrant kids that are out of place to suddenly being the popular kids.
Exactly.
And so she wants to embrace that, but then she sees her old friends for Chinatown, and she wants to make sure that they understand that, hey, I'm still the same person. Nothing changed, but their friends don't see it that way.
Exactly.
So in the middle of having everybody around her, you can kind of see almost still feels alone.
Right.
And even with Chuck, you see the push-pull in his character, him trying to dump the teachings that his uncle is trying to put forward to him. His mom kind of being on the fence, not really on one side or the other, but in his heart of hearts feeling like he needs to do the right thing because he can see Tommy and Roberta and they're not bad people.
Right.
And he doesn't understand why his uncle feels the way he feels.
What I appreciate though, like with his storyline and with Roberta, it's very real. Like we see this, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth on the second half of the show, but it feels like it's a real scenario.
Yeah.
Like you see, like he's dealing with the emotions of like, look, this my uncle's been there for me. He's taking care of us.
Yeah.
How can he be a terrible individual? But then seeing the expanse of it,
that he's willing to harm others to get what he wants.
It shows you that the dealing with the emotions of this stuff, while right and wrong are very black and white, dealing with people, it's a very muddy thing.
Yeah,
and
there's
this
shades
does
of gray
a
in there.
great job of showing you the emotions people have to deal with.
You know what's right and wrong, but they do a good job of projecting the perspectives of the characters to see why, even if it's wrong, why they think the way that they think.
Exactly.
And they don't try to push one idea or the other, at least not to this point of the story.
Right.
They don't make you choose, but they intentionally kind of muddy the waters in how each side is feeling the way that they feel.
Right. Now it's like I said, it's pretty clear. Like, we know what right and wrong is.
Right. Yeah. We know what right and wrong is.
And it shows you like it does a great job of when you're dealing with the KKK, who's the obvious bad guys of the storyline. I mean, they're drawn like bad guys, which is interesting.
Even the artwork.
Yeah. So there's other aspects happening in the story. We have the mystery of what's actually happening in the lab of the story. And again, it's about halfway through the book.
Which they don't spoil for you.
Yeah, we're trying not to spoil too much stuff, but you're looking at it, and Lois is trying to do some investigation, and she just can't get anywhere. But she does walk into a lab, and you see this dude floating in a tank.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, man, it's giving me some feels. Like, I'm wondering if this lab is trying to create their own Superman.
Right, like what's going on in this lab? And Lois is quickly escorted out of there, and you really don't get any answers
At all.
No, it's a little teaser. They drop that portion of the storyline on you in the middle of the story, and they just kind of leave it there.
Right.
It's like if you wanna know what Lois was looking at, you got to tune back in.
You got to do it.
We're not telling you anything.
Right, and of course Superman, he's like, they're dealing with him at the same time, and she's trying to tell him some stuff, and he keeps spacing out.
Yeah.
Like, the story's like really following him to a degree.
Right.
Like, she's just really is just to the side. But I'm legitimate, because every time she's like, well, look, here's this thing, and then he spaces out because he hears something or he sees something.
Yeah, he's getting flashes of the alien parents, or he's backtracking to his childhood and remembering things.
And I'm sitting there going, I need you to focus, dude, because I want to know what the heck she's thinking.
Exactly. Like, what's going on here, brother?
They do a great job of making you want to know what's happening.
Well, they're using Superman's conflict as a means and a way to draw the story out.
Exactly.
And it's not to be menial. What Superman is going through is important.
Right.
Because he needs to understand and establish his identity and who he is.
Right.
And what he can actually do. That's part of what the alien parents keep bugging him about. Hey, dude, you're not doing everything you can do. And he doesn't understand that. He actually wants him to leave him alone.
Right. I think it's a really great line. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more into this later, but they keep asking, why do you want to be half of who you are?
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting conversation when you're dealing with people who are dealing with a cultural change.
Right, a cultural shift.
And
because you have to remember that the Lees aren't the only ones who are filling out a place in an environment. And Superman himself, knowing that he now at this point as an adult, knowing he's not from Earth,
right, is
dealing with that same conflict.
Exactly.
And he's trying to hide it.
and not well at times.
No, not well. Not well at the time either.
So again, we have the mystery of what's happening in the lab. We have got this conflict where Chuck is trying to deal with his family, but also he's come to discover, because he's done live with these people. You got Tommy, who's developing a friendship with Chuck.
He is very much the glass half full guy in this story.
Yeah.
He's very redemptive, very forgiving, and he's the one that's kind of taking the challenge head on to embrace the relationships in their move. Roberta is very much the opposite. She's hesitant, she's afraid, she gets nervous, she throws up. That's one of the things she does. She gets nervous, she throws up.
Right.
But Tommy's the opposite. He's kind of taking the bull by the horns on this, almost to a point where the people around him feel like it's almost foolish.
Right.
So he's very much the opposite of his sister. They kind of balance each other out well.
Right.
And he tries his best he intentionally does things to prop her up, to make her look better, to make her feel better.
Exactly.
So even around the other people, he does things with the other kids to make her. He was the one that gave her the opportunity to say, "Hey, check out her jacket."
Yeah.
She got that from Superman.
Yeah.
So just so that the other kids would think she's cool.
Exactly.
He's very much the glass half full person.
Right.
He's always trying to string along the good.
Yeah. And then like the first book, like that, Roberta, her viewpoint is that he's just kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
And she struggled with the fact because she thinks that he's trying too hard to fit in.
Right.
But now she's coming to a natural point where she's developing friendships with people.
Right. And she sees why she's beginning to see the method behind his madness on why he's pressing so much is because he's trying to bridge that gap of normalcy and try to bring things together so that adjustment period is shorter and that they can grab relationships and people around them.
Right, exactly.
And she doesn't realize that he's actually trying to do a good thing for her. He's not trying to press her or put her down.
Right, which I think is a conflict a lot of people have when they're in that situation.
Yeah.
She's definitely the shy, locked away person. And when you have somebody who's super like outgoing, pushing you, it's awkward.
Yeah, he's an athlete. He's very extroverted,
right?
So he's used to being in front of people. He used to perform,
right?
And he's not afraid to do that.
Exactly.
She's not that type. She's the nurturing kind of the caring type. Her mother never speaks English in the comic. It takes her text and put it in red just to show that she's speaking back and forth with them in Chinese while they're speaking to her in English. So she kind of has that feeling. She's really close to her mother. She kind of has that reservedness like her mother does.
Right, absolutely. So again, we're trying not to give you guys spoilers because we want you guys to read these books, and you can get them on Comixology and other places. You can actually all 3 books are already out.
Yep.
So you can get it on a whole graphic novel. So again, we're not
finally
trying
out.
Finally, finally got our hands on them. But the ending scenes of it, I would say were pretty intense.
Very intense. It is very much the action verb of the story so far.
Like I think this was more intense as far than the first book. The first book was obviously it ends with the high point of intense, like what's happening. They kidnap Tommy and all this other stuff, but this one, like you see more of the Klansmen. And like dude is like straight up like excited to die.
Yeah.
For this cause. Like they're not just like some idiots. Like they really believe this. Like
they're completely invested in this ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like for us, like we're people are looking like, dude, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's wild to go, man, this is how martyrdom for cults happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people are like just so sold to it.
Right. You see that they are very willing to go to extremes to support what they believe. And they think, and you can tell in the way that it's written, of course, they're the bad guys, but you can tell from their perspective that they think that they're doing a good thing.
Right.
And even Tommy's mom is kind of on the fence. Oh, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
She treats it like it's no big deal for her, for his uncle to kind of want to, as she said, to be with his own kind.
Right.
What's wrong? She's like, what's wrong with that? So you really get the insight into the thinking, to the mindset of that time period, and they're true to it. They don't inject any 2019, 2020 into it.
It's purely in the day and age that it was, which is important. And we're going to get a little more to that. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the deeper things that take place in the book. We're going to talk about maybe some cultural aspects that we deal with here today that are reflected in this book itself. And so all that's coming up soon.
All right, so what we like to do here on the Retro Rewind podcast is at the end of our like section, we do our classic makers, the things that we loved most about the movies we cover. I'll start us off, then we'll go to Paul. The thing I loved most about The Princess Bride was probably the dueling sword scene between Inigo and Dread Pirate Roberts, Wesley. That's just such a great sword fight scene. I love that they use the actual fencing like terminology and techniques. And the only little quibble I have is when Wesley does his spinning his
the best sword fight scene ever.
Yes, but when Wesley does his gymnastics high bar routine and lands, you can see the pillow bag or the mat puff up with the dust. You see the outline of it, so it's not perfect. But that is my favorite part about Princess Bride. How about you, Paul?
My favorite thing about The Princess Bride is the movie The Princess Bride. I just love that it exists. I love the story. I love the characters. I love the cast. I love the interaction. It's just it's one of my top favorite films of all time. So I like the whole movie.
Paul, how can that be your top movie when, as good as that sword fight is between Wesley and Inigo, I feel like the one between Inigo and the Six Finger Man should be even more epic, and it's sort of like isn't as good.
He's not better. No, that it will be less because Wesley's better, so therefore that fight would be better.
All right, fine. You know what? All right, well, I guess, but now we do have to talk about. Oh, darn it! I always do this. How come I cannot remember one more thing I liked? Comm Talk by Geek Devotions. You're listening to it right now.
All right, and we're back. We appreciate you guys listening to that commercial. We want to encourage you guys, please check out our friends over at Retro Rewind Podcast. They're fantastic individuals, and they have a great podcast that I think will encourage you in more ways than one. I find that laughter is a fantastic encouragement, and I can't help but laugh when I'm listening to those guys.
Yeah, and laughter is a good tool, but not just that, kind of reflective, with Retro Rewind. It kind of gets you an opportunity to look back on some of the absurdity of the past.
It's awesome. And what's great about it is like they bring all these nostalgic feelings.
Yeah.
So I think that for some of you guys, you're going to really enjoy their show.
Good guys.
Side note, I will be on their show coming up. I'm not really sure when the episode will air, but I'm going to be doing a recording later this month. And we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters movie.
Only thing I can think of is Ray Parker Jr. in the song. Oh my gosh!
So off topic, but when was the last time you watched Ghostbusters?
The original one?
Yeah.
Actually, I saw parts of it not too long ago, like a couple of months ago. It was on in one of the break rooms of a place I was working at. And so it actually was like a couple of months ago the last time I laid out on the original version.
So, because I'm having to make up my mind of how I would rate it. Because on Retro, it's rated as classic, nostalgic, or tragic. Classic being, this is a great film, everyone needs to watch it. Nostalgic means like, if you liked it, don't spoil your memories of it.
Right.
Maybe watch it if you just want to. And tragic is like, please put it away. How would you rate it?
I think it's a movie that actually, in the light of when it was made, kind of aged well. I think it's classic.
Yeah, I'm leaning that way too in my mindset. I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Yeah.
And getting a firm...
I need to watch the whole thing again.
Yeah. So if you want to know what my thoughts are on it, subscribe to Retro Rewind Podcast on your favorite podcast catcher right now.
Yes.
And come back to this podcast. And you'll find out here in a couple of weeks.
Yep, you will.
All right, so let's get into some deeper conversations about Superman versus the Klan.
Yeah.
This is this brought up some really interesting points, some interesting conversations that take place, and even some of the villainy that takes place within the KKK. So there's just a lot to cover. I'm not sure where to begin. So, Carlos, what's something that you saw in this? You're like, man, this is just something that just really hit home for me.
We talked a little bit about it with Roberta, her interactions with her friends. She's grown up in Chinatown, largely ethnically homogeneous culture, and now she's in Metropolis, where it's a lot more variety.
Right.
And she's around a lot of white folks now.
Yeah.
And now there's this push-pull between her and her friends. If now that she's with a new set of friends, they think she's cool and neato because she has a jacket made for her that belonged to Superman. This little weird kid keeps asking if it smells like cotton candy and
that kid
and things. And so now she's neck deep in her popularity with her new surroundings.
Right.
And now her old friends look at that popularity as a threat to their culture.
Right.
And it's like, hey, do you think you're better than us now?
Right.
Now that you kind of climbed the ladder, you're up in Metropolis.
Right.
Are you too good for us folks down here in Chinatown?
Yeah.
And she has to process that.
Mm-hmm.
She has to figure out, what am I going to do with this? And one thing I like about this is that the children are allowed to process these things, and the adults aren't getting in the way and pushing stuff on them in the storyline. You get a perspective of how the children are trying to process this within themselves, and they don't throw a moderator in there to kind of get in the way of that. They let them live it out. They let them struggle with that push pull a little bit.
Right. So this is something you and I were talking off air. I've seen this take place in society today, where you have people who have grown up, and it's not just a culture, but like maybe in a poverty mindset, and somebody does well. Mm-hmm. And they're like, look, I'm doing this, and they move out of the ghetto, they move out of the hood, they move out of the slums, and all of a sudden they have family members, they have friends, and they they're shunned by their community. They're these people who they've done life with all their lives for the simple fact of doing well and moving out.
Yeah.
I forgot who it was. It was some artist many years ago, and he goes, "Nobody does well. Nobody makes money to stay in the ghetto.
Yeah.
They make money to get out of the ghetto.
Right.
And we shouldn't shame people for doing just that."
Right. Well, what it boils down to, to a possibly insecurity in an individual that they're the ones that feeling like they're being left behind. So you project that onto the person that's moving forward and saying, well, you think that you're better than me. And it's not that person always, and there could be instances where they do, it's not always that person thinks they're better than you. It's that you think you're less than that person. And so it becomes a projection issue. And I've seen that. I work in the tech industry and I'm usually one of the few black people that work where I work. And I've seen in places that I go into and businesses that I frequent, because I'm a tech guy, I have access to the bosses, I have access to the CEOs and to the managers and to the presidents of the company. And so people will see me walking around with those guys, doing walkthroughs and pointing through things and having direct access to those things and say, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that. And those people will listen to me.
Right.
And then people that are more in my that would be more connected to my social circle. You know, if I know them, they kind of look at me with a side eye, like, oh, you walk around with Mr. Such and Such. You must think you're better than us. Or you walk around with that guy. Or even when it comes to race, I'm around a lot of those white guys.
Right.
And sometimes I'm in a place where the lay people, the laborers are in a place where are predominantly black. And they don't talk to me. They don't talk to me like maybe they see me with management, upper management and things. And sometimes it takes a minute to talk with those people or to work around those people or to get an opportunity with my job to interact with them and to serve them and to fix things for them and show them that I care about everybody, where they'll begin to develop a relationship with me. And I've seen that personally myself, where it takes that from the outside looking in that, oh, you think you're better than us because you're around these people, and not around and I have to work actually to be intentional to overcome that perception for people.
So what do you do? How do you work to overcome that perception of everyone going like, oh, look at you, Carlos, you're better than you must think you're better than us, because again they're perceiving that they're incorrectly perceiving that you're putting them down just by doing well. How do you work to overcome that without damaging yourself? Because it feels like there comes a point where some people apologize to the point of self-deprecation, and they're no longer having joy in doing what they're doing. So how do you do that?
Use your opportunities and your positions to serve. Jesus said it, that the chief is among you, be a servant to all. And I was told by one of my professional mentors that real leadership is servanthood. If you interact with the people that feel like that and you show them servanthood, like me being in tech, I can interact with those people from the highest upper management all the way down to the guy who just walked in the front door. But when I interact with that person and I have my hands on something that affects them, I show them that I am here to help you. I'm here so that your life and your work and your productivity is better. And if you have a problem, you got access to me. If you have a need, and I make sure people know that if you have a need, reach out to me. You have access. And when they see that I genuinely, that I'm just doing my job from top to bottom, that I'm not brown nosing, I'm not trying to prop myself up. It's not about me, but it's about others. The people will come off of that. You don't think you're better than me because you'll come down here and you'll serve me. You'll go up to the president of the company and fix his things, but you'll come back here to the back side of the shop where it's an accident grease and you'll fix these things too. You know, you just if you'll serve people, if you will take into account what's important to them and support that too, as long as it's the right things and support that too, people they'll get to see a character rather than the avatar of what they think you are.
And I think that's a great. You said it right, rather than an avatar of what they think you are. For those of you maybe you're not familiar, avatars are these digital personas that we have out on the internet. They're normally like your profile picture or something like that. And back in the day, the avatar was normally looked a lot better than you.
Yes. Most of mine do.
So, but people, they form their own avatar. They form this own reality. And I remember it's weird with like in the early days of the internet, you'd meet people and they'd always send you the best picture of themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you finally meet these people and you're like, oh, I mean, you're kind of different,
Right. You worked hard on that, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Or just like different things. Recently, we had our friend Kevin here with us. Kevin, the Dapper Man. Check out the Dapper Man YouTube channel.
Real good guy.
He's a fantastic guy. And but Kevin, when he first thing, I go to pick him up from that place he's staying at here in Shreveport when he came to visit us. And he goes, wow, I thought you were taller. He had this mentality that I was a good foot taller. Now I'm not a short guy. I'm 5'11".
Yeah.
But in his mind, just because of the persona that he saw, he thought I was a taller individual. And people outside of the digital space, even they create an avatar of who they think we are.
Yeah.
And who we think we're not.
Right.
And I think that you hit it. Being willing to serve, it's showing it's being vulnerable to people. Open up. This is
Absolutely.
who I am. And like poor Roberta in the story, like she didn't have a chance to do that. Her friends just like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, they just wrote it off immediately.
Just snubbed her. And like I said, you see this happening a lot. Even I remember years ago hanging out with some friends of mine who are like first and second generation Latinos. And they talked about the struggle of like how having family members who have done well and gone on to do well here in the States. And then there's family members who are still kind of in the hoods of their neighborhoods and going, what, you think you're better than us now? Just because you make money, because you do all this stuff. And I remember our friends going, to a degree, you want to say, yeah, I think I am better. Because, and what it boils down to, and what I'll never forget what my friend said was, I think I'm better only because of the fact that I refuse to live at a victim mentality.
Right.
And they said the sad thing is their family members don't have to live in the same mentality.
Right.
They may not be making bank,
Right.
but they don't have to live in a victim mentality where everything is harming them.
Right. You don't have to sabotage the relationships around you through that.
Exactly. So I think it's a good conversation piece here dealing with that of, maybe we shouldn't judge people so quickly.
Yeah.
Just because they've left the neighborhood. Maybe they're doing a little better. Maybe they're doing something a little differently than what you've known them to do.
Right. Talking about judging people, that's kind of another idea, is that if you want to pick up on the good side of things,
Right.
that Tommy is the antithesis of judging people.
Right.
He is willing to reach out and redeem the wrongdoer.
Exactly.
And I think that was another thing that was a really strong theme of what I saw out of that.
Right.
Is that, Tommy is almost convicting. Here's this guy who was just in front of his house with a burning cross, but he has an opportunity now that he has a broken arm that, hey, you're the man now. You got to step up, be in the picture, and I'm going to teach you how. I'm going to teach you how to do what I do, and to take my place even.
Exactly. But what's even better about Tommy, though, isn't just that he's willing to redeem. He took a moment to step back and really examine the situation. And the scene that Carlos is talking about, you see them, they're doing this stuff, and Roberta's like, hey, why are you doing this? He's the one that tried to throw the bomb into our house. And Tommy goes, is that true? And Chuck's like, yeah.
Chuck owned it.
Yeah, he did.
Chuck credit for that. He owned it.
And he, sadly, you tell he's had grief. And what was great is Tommy in that moment goes, wait a minute. This kid is a great thrower. He's a natural thrower. We have massive windows. And he looks at Chuck and goes, did you miss on purpose? And he goes, yeah, I did. And in that moment, Tommy's not only giving him the opportunity to redeem himself, but he's going, I see the struggle in you.
Right.
I see what you're dealing with.
Yeah, he sees the fight that he's in.
Right. And he's having not just forgiveness, but mercy.
Yeah.
And he's given an opportunity to grow. Yeah. Which is really interesting. I think that we need that more in society. We're giving people opportunity to grow past the situation they're in.
Right.
And going, man, it's a terrible situation.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about earlier, like it's kind of muddy.
Yeah, and these are kids.
Yeah. These are kids, and Chuck is in a very muddy situation. Yeah. How do you go, this is a person who has loved me and cared for me and taken care of me all my life. Right. They're an evil, hateful individual. Right. Like, that's really hard.
He can't draw that delineation, that demarcation, because he's seen both sides of his uncle.
Exactly.
And he's truly conflicted. And what I also see in Tommy is the propensity to avoid bitterness.
Right.
And that's something else that I thought about too, is that you can be a person because of the wrongdoings of others, and they could be wrong with two left shoes.
Right.
They can be completely wrong, but your reaction to their wrong will determine the type of person that you are. And Tommy refuses to go down the path of bitterness.
Exactly.
He refuses to go there.
Right.
You know, and and I think it's to his good. It's also to Chuck's good because Chuck has a path of redemption.
Right.
And it's also to his little sister's good because she can see past the wrong that Chuck has done and able to see things more the way that her big brother does.
Exactly. So another interesting aspect that takes place in this book, I think, is with dealing with Superman's arc, where his parents, whether it's the Vision or whatever, they keep asking him, why do you only be half of who you are? This is a real struggle I see with people who are coming from different cultures, coming to the States, or coming out of a neighborhood and going into another neighborhood, and people accuse them like, why are you trying to act so,
right?
Whatever, trying to act white, trying to act this, act that, or why are you trying to be so American? Don't you understand you are Mexican, you're Chinese and stuff like that. That's a real struggle people have. And here's Clark again. He knows nothing else. Like, this is what I find interesting about Clark's character, as opposed to a character like Roberta, who grew up in her culture.
Right.
Clark, Kal-El, Superman, he grew up in a culture that is completely alien to his quote unquote race.
Yeah, his origin. Yeah.
And now he's being confronted. And you do see a struggle where people who maybe are second, third, fourth generation American, and they are struggling with the concept of, well, what's my culture?
Right. How do I balance the way that I was raised with the way that my family or my ancestors, or what my genealogy is, what my identity is through my DNA.
Right.
And how do I balance that?
Right. How do we honor our culture, our past, and still be who we are today?
Yeah.
People who watch our show regularly, they know, I'm part Latino. Many generations back, I'm like 25%. I like tacos, and I like a lot of stuff in the Latin culture, but I can't stand up and go, I'm Mexican, because I didn't grow up in the culture of that.
Right.
I'm an American. I have a lot of stuff that's happening in my background. I got some Mexican culture. We have some Latino or some Italian stuff going on here. We have just Southern culture, which is a thing.
Welcome to the South.
I grew up in the Midwest, up in Missouri and Texas, and so there's a lot of that. I'm kind of an amalgam of many cultures and mindsets, and that's how to come together form who I am.
Right.
And
you combine that with geek culture.
Yeah, geek culture is a whole nother aspect.
It is.
And so I see it through a lens differently. And so to go, well, who do I represent?
Right.
It's an identity conversation now.
And that's when you got to know who you are, because who you are is a combination of all those things.
Right.
And we have to learn that we don't have to be a compartment.
Right.
That we don't have to. I can't say, well, because I'm black, I have to think this way, look this way, act this way, or hold to this certain XYZ, whatever it is. I have to understand the sum of my parts make me who I am.
Exactly.
Having an identity and me being not just black, me being a father, me being a Christian, me being a husband, me being a worker, me being a leader, me being an elder, things like that. The sum of my parts make me who I am. And it's not just one of those compartments.
Right.
It's those things combined together that makes it. I mean, it's almost like it's the Voltron issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Slap Voltron together. Individually you got this and this going on, but once you put it all together, you got a bigger picture.
Exactly.
And you have to realize that you don't have to compartmentalize yourself into one thing. That God make you uniquely wonderful.
Right.
And those things can be intentional.
Right. Now, there is an aspect, because you and I, as men who believe in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, as people who profess to be Christians, we do have to have a standard of certain things. And I think there is a trap that some Christians fall into, going, well, yes, under the cross, everything's stripped away. There's no longer Jew nor Greek. There's only those who follow Jesus Christ, right? But sometimes we confuse Southern Christianity for Christianity, Yankee Christianity for
American Western Christianity for Christianity, Black Christianity
to Christianity, or Mexican Christianity. Like I've when my time in Texas, I hung out with a lot of Latinos, and Now, you and I, we go to an Assembly of God church. And I tell people, if you want to see what an Assembly of God church is, you will have to visit every single one in the nation because we're all different.
Very different.
We all have a different thing. But the Latino culture, they hold very strongly to some of the traditions from Mexico, which is very Catholic based. And so when you walk into some Mexican churches, they are... they're very different and they go kind of 1-2 ways. Either one, they're super anti that looks anything like it's came from the Catholic faith, and some that are still pretty much in that mindset.
Right. Yeah.
And, but dealing with that, there's still this divide of, well, what does the Word of God say?
Right.
And at any point in time when we have a cultural issue that, is counter the Word of God, that's where we have to make a change.
Right. We have to resort to the standard because first and foremost, I'm made in the image of God, and my identity can only be properly reflected and channeled through him who he made me to be, because he's the one that has the purpose for my life,
exactly,
and everything else falls into place after that.
I was talking with a guy who comes from some Irish descent. His entire family is Irish. I mean, they are, somewhere in their pipeline there's a leprechaun, I'm sure. And this is a dude, like, he wears like a Lucky Charms, like he owns it, man.
That's beautiful.
But he struggled with alcoholism and drinking heavily. And I was talking with him because he was a believer in Jesus Christ. He's like, well, I'm Irish. We're supposed to drink. I'm like, no, you're Irish, but you're a man of God.
Yeah, first and foremost.
And the Word of God says, do not be drunk.
Yeah.
So you have to come to terms, is your culture godly or not? In the Word of God, we have people who lived a culture of sin, and they had to go through identity change to a degree. They've met and encountered God, and they changed the way they thought, changed the way they did things. Were they different people? No. They were still these people, but now they lived according to the Word of God.
Right.
And I think that's the struggle for a lot of people, and that we have to deal with is, as Christians, we stand by the Word of God, but still honor your culture, honor your heritage that you have.
My culture was, God is intentional. He knew how I was going to be born, when I was going to be born, where I was going to be born to, where and how I was going to be raised. He knows that. And there are aspects of that are used for his purposes.
Right.
But we can't put the cart before the horse. We have to understand that his standard, he is the standard bearer, and that his standard comes first before anything else.
Right.
And everything that follows behind that are simply tools for him to use, even for his purposes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, are there any last things you want to talk about with some of the deeper conversations from it? I know there's a lot to the book.
There's a lot to the book. There's a lot to it. And I'm waiting to see, the assertive position that the black detective takes. You do see, even with Perry in the paper, that they really don't take him seriously. Here's a guy who's a leader, who's a detective in the police force, and he has to be able to get his arms around this KKK problem.
Right.
But nobody seems to take him as seriously as they need to because he's black.
Right.
And just in that time period, that post World War II time period, that's something he's in. And so I'm waiting to see how that's gonna play itself out. Because he's trying to do the best he can, but he's getting a lot of walls, and not always intentional walls like you are with the KKK, but just with Perry, just things he's not even thinking about.
I think Perry represents just the average American's like, I'm just going to go and do this. Well, we're not thinking about the legal ramifications of things.
And just somebody that maybe that's not completely in tune with what's happening. He's kind of buried into his work, and he's not seeing the social side of it, or the legal side. He's not seeing all that. He's trying to do the right thing, but he's not seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. I do want to point out this. If you guys get the books, I want to encourage you. Sometimes when you get the graphic novels, people will skip the intro and the outro stuff. You need to read these little dissertations that Yang does on the back end of these things. The first one talks about the Chinese immigrant and what life was like for Chinese people when they first came to the States. In this book, he goes into some of the conversations about stuff that takes place in World War II. He talks about how there was kind of a cultural shift, that when at one point there was, all the characters of Chinese individuals with the slant eyes, and they're always the evil, deceiving individual. And people begin to treat them like that. And then World War II hits.
Yep.
And then we have a shift in the culture where Chinese people were they were our best friends for a while during World War II, and all of a sudden, in publications, like in the comic books and in media, you see a shift where the evil was no longer a Chinese individual, but a Japanese individual. Yeah. And what's interesting was he points out there was an article in I forget what magazine it was, but where they actually did a thing. It's on that page right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But they did an article where they go, how to identify friend from foe, and basically teaching people how to identify Chinese individuals from Japanese individuals. Yeah. And again, it's a huge racial shift. Yeah. And while Yang is kind of it was good for the Chinese people, for the Japanese people, it got really bad. Yeah. All of a sudden, we have internment camps across the nation for Japanese Americans, not for German Americans or anybody else who joined the Axis, but just the Japanese individuals. Yep. Of course, we took it pretty personal. I mean, when they bombed Japan's the ones who bombed Pearl Harbor, but I haven't done enough research. I haven't done enough to research into it, but I'm told they weren't to the extreme of the concentration camps. Right. No. But they were still locked down camps for Japanese individuals. And I want to encourage you guys. I want you guys, for reals, read these books. Yeah. Read these articles.
There's a lot of meat on the other side of the story.
Man, it's so like it helps. It enhances the story so much that you're reading. Right.
Well, you understand the motives behind the writers and where they're trying to go, and they're not just trying to tell a story. Right. They're trying to get you to understand a concept and a principle.
Right. As Christians, we look at the Word of God, and one of the things I tell people when I'm teaching them about how to read the Bible is ask questions. What's the context? What's happening here? And sometimes it's hard, but this book does a great job of providing all that for you.
Looking forward to part 3.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's today's episode of Comm Talk. We hope you enjoyed it. We encourage you guys to please check out all of our stuff. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Look for Geek Devotions. Also encourage you to, if you found this conversation interesting, share it out with some individuals. I really feel like that these conversations that we've been having have, I think that they can challenge the thinking of some individuals.
Absolutely. We need to be challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not just across the board, on all sides. I think it will challenge a lot of individuals in a healthy way. Yeah. And so please share it out and leave a review also on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts lets people know what the show's about and helps to encourage people to maybe check it out. And and helps Google go, hey, not Google, Apple go, hey, this is a good podcast. You should check it out.
Yeah, it's worth it. You have to convince them it's worth it.
Right. So, in case you guys haven't noticed, we're ramping up more stuff with here at Geek Devotions. We're in the process of doing a few things as far as with our website, with our store that we have. Geekdevotions.com is where you can visit our website. Our podcast is one of those things that Celeste and I are really working hard to progress and make better. Right. And so part of that is having more regular podcasts, at least twice a month. Now, right now, we're kind of in a season where we have one every single week. That's going to slow down. We're going to go back to twice a month here soon. We're going to have what we call the lost episodes coming up. Because going to be interesting. Yeah, well, we lost. If you go back our feed, you guys don't see episodes 13 and down to episode 1, and it's because we switched to podcast host, and our previous podcast host is not nice. So we're doing that. We had a good friend, John Haru, who is the podcast host, and also I say host, not the hosting of it, but he's like the host of a podcast called Playing Games with Strangers, which Celeste is on. And John worked some podcast magic, and he obtained for us the recordings of all 13 episodes that we have lost.
Oh, go John!
So John, you're my hero. I know you're listening or you're watching, and thank you. So we're going to be posting these up. Check out Playing Games with Strangers. Links in the description down below. We got that going on. Branson Boykin he's got his B's Views and Reviews, where once a month he's reviewing family-friendly comics.
Wonderful.
And so that's going to be a thing. And then, of course, we're also, hopefully next month, have Carlos back on to talk about book number 3.
Yes.
And I'm excited about it because this book really does leave you with a cliffhanger. And I'm really does. I need to finish the story.
It's very well developed.
Very well. I do need to say this because it's just disclaimers. We're not being paid to review these books.
No.
These books weren't given to us.
At least nobody told me. I haven't gotten into that.
Patreon, thanks to our patrons, we were able to purchase a copy for Carlos here. So thank you guys for helping that out with that. And if you want to be a patron, if you want to help support Geek Devotions, again, visit our website, geekdevotions.com, where for as little as $1 a month, you can become one of our monthly patrons. Or you can do a one-time gift through PayPal. So that's the thing that takes place.
It does. It does.
And so, Carlos, is there anything you want to add last as we close up before we do everything else?
I'm looking forward to part 3. I think they're doing a good job of developing the story. They're not interjecting anything other than what the story demands for the time period. And
Right.
I think it's going to be. I'm looking forward to how they wrap up the lessons that are taught here, and they're doing it really well, and they're doing it in such a compact.
Right.
A compact form factor that it's really working well.
Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie. I'm can't wait to finish book 3, but I kind of want DC to do more of these.
Yeah.
I want them to take more interesting stories like this, keep it in the context of the year that came out in,
Yeah.
and do these because this was really fascinating.
And let people decide.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Well, guys, again, like I said, that's all we got. If you want to check out Carlos, he does have a podcast that he's working in the background diligently. We're to relaunch hopefully in the next couple of months. It's called Healing Truth Ministries.
Yep.
Where can they follow you on Instagram?
Oh, they can follow me at Healing Truth ORG, Healing Truth Org. You can find that on Instagram, or you can find that on Twitter.
Okay, sweet. So check him out, follow him, send him messages and tell him how amazing he is, and tell him how much you can't wait for his podcast to come back, because I can't.
Hopefully, it's in the works. We had quite a few bumps and hiccups, but
Right.
man, there must be something good, man, because it's been so much work just getting things lined up to get it off the ground.
I understand the struggle, man. You do great work with your podcast, and you do great work with other things. As a elder at our church, you do a lot of stuff. You do a lot behind the scenes. You've been a great friend for Celeste and I, helping us get stuff done over the years. And man, I just appreciate you taking your time to geek out with me and talk about this comic book.
It's been valuable, and it scratches the itch of mine. I like it.
Awesome. Very good. Well, guys, again, take a look at us on, leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Check all of our social media. And until next time, remember, stay devoted.
Peace and love.